The story of Mark happened in 2002 when he was 17 years old, so now he's 37. And I know my voice might sound like it's generated by AI, because it is, but I promise you, this story is 100% original and not automated. The only reason I'm using an AI voice is because my real voice is kind of ugly. He has a brother named James who is 1 year younger than him. At the time of the story, their mother was still young, in her early 30s, meaning she got married when she was really young. You know how marriages used to be back then. No one cared much about legal age requirements. Their father, Sam, who was in his late 40s, worked in one of the military sectors. Besides being diabetic, his personality was a bit rough, and he had a serious temper, but only when the situation called for it. If something really stressed him out, he would snap. We're from the Eastern region, born and raised there, and we spent our entire lives in that area. Our hometown is in the southwest, about 560 miles away from the Eastern region, so you can imagine how exhausting it was to travel there. Anyway, one year, our dad promised us that if we got good grades, he would buy us gifts. My brother James and I were the worst students in school. At that time, in the early 2000s, the PlayStation 1 had just come out, and we'd hear our friends at school say, "My dad's going to buy me a PlayStation 1," or "I'm getting a Nokia phone." That got us really excited about the PlayStation 1, so James and I worked super hard, studying until we finally achieved grades we had never achieved like that before. We went to our dad to tell him the good news. "Dad, we passed." He replied, "All right, what do you want?" "I'll get you your gifts," James said. "Honestly, Dad, whatever you give us is more than enough." I told him, "Stop acting all respectful, James. We agreed on what we wanted from Dad." James added, "Honestly, Dad, we agreed that if we passed." Dad interrupted, "As soon as I get my paycheck, which is coming next week, we'll go to the village. I'll take you to the market, and you can buy whatever you want." And that's exactly what happened. His paycheck came, and we went to the market. Mom came with us too, and Dad bought her a Nokia phone. As for us, we got our gifts and felt like the happiest people on earth. But that happiness didn't last long. That same day, in the afternoon, we were playing PlayStation when Dad came home from work and said, "Tomorrow morning we need to head to the village, so start packing your stuff now. Pack the bags and get everything ready because we're leaving in the morning. And don't be like those people who give me trouble later." By the way, I forgot to mention it earlier. I already told you guys, right? Our dad absolutely loved the village. He loved it so much that he even considered resigning from his job just so we could move there for good. The next morning, we woke up early to the sound of Dad saying, "Get up, we're running late, we have to leave early." He went around turning off the air conditioners, closing the windows and making sure the gas cylinder in the kitchen was shut off. After that, he brought the car up close to the gate so we could start loading our luggage and the stuff we needed for the trip. We were busy packing and loading everything into the car, helping Dad. I had left my PlayStation and a few storybooks on the side, thinking I'd pack them later. So I quickly grabbed them, got into the car, opened my bag, and put them inside. At that moment, it was just me and Dad in the car. Mom and James were still inside the house, finishing packing their things. While we were there, I noticed that Dad opened the glove compartment, pulled out his gun, and started cleaning it, making sure it was loaded and all. Out of curiosity, I asked him, "Dad, why are you bringing the gun?" It was the first time I'd seen him take a weapon with us on a trip. He replied, "Son, it's always better to be safe. You never know what can happen on the road." Then he said, "Go tell James and your mom to hurry up. We're running late, and I want to get going while it's still daytime." So I got out, called them, helped them finish packing, and we loaded everything into the car. We got ready and left. As usual, we stopped by the local grocery store like we did every year to buy snacks and supplies for the trip. After that, the road was just a long stretch. No gas stations, no stores, no services. Nothing for 250 miles except for one rest area. After that, the next stretch to the village was about 310 miles with no services either. Back then, the roads were really exhausting. After driving around 155 to 185 miles in the middle of the day, we were dying from the heat. Mom glared at Dad angrily and said, "So you lied to me?" He replied, "No, I didn't lie. I was busy with work and didn't have time." They started arguing. I tried to calm them down, saying, "Come on guys, let's just relax." But it wasn't working. Finally, Mom said, "We're stopping at the next rest area until the afternoon, and then we'll continue when it cools down." Dad said, "No, we can't. It's too dangerous to drive at night with all the highway robbers and other risks." Mom replied, I don't care. We're stopping so you don't lie to me again. You could have told me, and I would have had one of the kids take care of it. Anyway, we stopped at the rest area, and it was blazing hot, right in the middle of the day, in the height of summer. But as soon as we got inside the rest area, it was cool. Some of us showered, others changed clothes, and we all had lunch and drank some buttermilk. You wouldn't believe it, after that meal we all passed out. Imagine, we woke up around 7 p.m., between sunset and evening, and guess who woke us up? The owner of the rest area. He knocked on the door saying, "Hey, you guys said you were leaving by the afternoon. Now it's 8 p.m. Please, pay for the extra hours." Dad sighed. Oh man. Not because he had to pay for the extra hours, but because we overslept, and now we'd have to drive on that dangerous road at night. He turned to Mom, still angry, and said, "Get up. Look what you've done to us." Mom woke up startled. "What happened? What's wrong?" Dad pointed to the clock. "Look at the time." She glanced at the clock and Dad said, "You happy now?" Mom tried to calm him down. "Come on, Mark, relax. It's not a big deal. We'll just stay the night and leave in the morning." But Dad wasn't having it. "I told you, I'm not wasting any more of my vacation. I'm spending every day in the village. Now get dressed and wake the kids, we're leaving." Mom tried one last time. "Mark, please. It's dangerous to travel at night with all the risks on the road." But Dad cut her off. "No, this is on you. Now do what I said. I'll go warm up the car." Mom came over to wake us up. "Come on, kids, get up. Your dad is waiting in the car, and he's really upset." James and I were both groggy and trying to convince her, "Come on, can't we just stay? Dad's mad, and you know how he gets when he's stressed." But Mom warned us, "If your dad comes in here, he'll beat both of you and James. Now get up and get dressed. We're leaving." So there we were, dragging ourselves out of bed, James and I, along with Mom, heading to the car. As we were walking out, we saw the rest area owner talking with Dad, and they were standing so close to the car, we could hear them. Mom rolled down the car window and started listening in. Imagine what the rest area owner was telling Dad. He was really calm and genuinely trying to convince Dad to stay until morning because driving at night was extremely dangerous. He even said, "You know, you're the first family I've ever seen leave at night. It's strange. Most families stay here and head out in the morning." The man truly had our best interests at heart. And honestly, after hearing what happened next on the road, you'll lose your mind. The things we went through were unbelievable. Dad came back to the car, and Mom asked him, "Did you change your mind?" Dad replied, "No, I didn't. This is your fault, and it'll stay your fault." You see, my mom has a way of pushing him, and my dad, being naturally hot-tempered, doesn't let things go. It was a recipe for disaster. Anyway, 3 things happened during the trip, but the third and final one is something I'll never forget. It still affects me to this day. Here's what happened. After driving for a long stretch, in total darkness, on an empty road, James suddenly asked Dad to pull over because he really needed to use the bathroom. Dad stopped by the side of the road, and James got out to relieve himself. After he was done and walking back toward the car, out of nowhere, he collapsed. As soon as James fell, Mom immediately opened the car door and got out. Oh, how I wish she hadn't, I swear. To this day, I can't forget what I saw. My dad and I jumped out of the car, terrified, trying to figure out what was happening. Just as Mom got within a meter of James, she collapsed too, screaming. The closer we got, the louder Mom screamed, telling us, "Don't come any closer." I was paralyzed with fear and shock, frozen in place. My dad rushed back to the car, grabbed the wrench, and told me, "Stay here, don't follow me." When Dad reached them, he started pounding the ground with the wrench, all while repeating, "There is no power and no strength except through God. Oh God, please help us, please." At that moment, I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Even though I was only a few steps away from them, it felt like an eternity. My legs wouldn't carry me, and when I finally reached them, imagine I suddenly saw a horned viper lying right next to James. This snake is known for its sidewinding movements, and just one bite can be lethal. It's you and the grave, nothing in between. I quickly glanced to the left and saw Dad tying Mom's leg with her scarf. He turned to me and said, "Hurry, Mark. Go to the car, open any bag, and grab some pants or fabric so we can tie up James's leg." At that moment, for the first time in my life, I lost it with Dad. I shouted, "This is all your fault. Mom said we should have stayed, but no, you insisted we go. Look what your stubbornness has done. If something happens to them, I swear, I'll never forgive you. Not in this life or the next." Dad's face turned red, and his blood sugar started spiking. He yelled back, "You ungrateful brat. How dare you raise your voice at me?" Mom quickly stepped in, trying to calm us both down, saying, "This isn't the time for this." I ran to the car as Dad had asked, searching through the bags for any piece of cloth or pants to tie James' leg. As I was rummaging through the trunk, a pickup truck suddenly pulled up behind me. A guy got out, and honestly, he looked sketchy, really skinny, almost frail, like he'd fly away if the wind blew too hard. But as the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. He turned out to be a solid guy, someone you could rely on. However, there was one thing he did that made me despise him from that moment onward. The guy asked me, "What's going on? Is everything okay?" He seemed surprised that we were stuck on a deserted road in the middle of the night. So, I told him everything that happened. He then asked, "Where are they?" I told him to follow me. He said, "Okay, hold on a second." He went back to his truck and grabbed a bottle of water before following me. When we got to James and the snake, he instantly recognized how dangerous this type of snake was. Since he was from the area, he had some experience dealing with cases like this. Without hesitation, he grabbed James' leg and washed the snake bite with the water he had brought, trying to flush out the venom. Then, he started sucking the venom from the bite mark, spitting it out repeatedly. He did this about 10 times, working to remove as much venom as possible. While he was busy treating James, his gaze suddenly shifted toward my mom. He couldn't take his eyes off her. I swear, his stare was unnerving. My dad had tied Mom's leg with her scarf, leaving her exposed. So I quickly took off my light jacket, the old one from back in the day, and used it to cover her. You know, with all the chaos and fear, Dad completely forgot that Mom was uncovered. Once the man finished treating James, he brought the water bottle close to his mouth, recited some prayers over it, and then sprinkled some of the water onto James' leg. He handed it to him and said, "Drink a couple of sips." James drank a bit, and then the man poured a little more water into his hand and washed James' face. I asked James, "How are you feeling now?" To be honest, at that moment, James was in terrible shape. He was drenched in sweat, his skin was pale, and he was in so much pain. But after the man's treatment, while James wasn't completely healed, he definitely improved. Then, without warning, the man tried to grab my mom's leg to treat her. Instinctively, I jumped up and stood right in front of him, blocking his way. "Whoa, what are you doing?" I asked. Dad looked at me and said, "Son, move aside and let the man help your mother." Of course, Dad hadn't noticed the guy's earlier creepy stare at Mom. I tried to explain to Dad, but he was upset, saying, "Just step aside and let him work. Your mom is really unwell." I realized there was no point in arguing. We were in the middle of the desert, and Mom's condition was serious. So, I reluctantly moved aside, but my heart was breaking. Even as he treated Mom, I stood with my back turned, refusing to watch. Then, a little while later, I heard the guy talking to Dad, saying, "Thank God, your wife's condition is much better than your son's. The snake barely grazed her leg because its fangs got stuck in her abaya. She's lucky." After some small talk, Dad said to me, "Mark, go get the car so we can take them." But then, that guy had the nerve to say, "No need, sir. This area is soft sand. If you bring the car here, it might get stuck. I'll carry your wife, and you and Mark can carry your son." At that moment, I lost it. I snapped and told him, "You've helped us enough. You can leave now, thank you." After he left, we managed to carry Mom and James to the car, and thank God, they were stable enough that we could make it to the town clinic to see if they needed any anti-venom. After that guy drove off in his truck, we also hit the road. As we were driving, I was boiling with rage. I was still fuming inside, wishing I could punch that guy. Dad noticed how unusually quiet I was because, usually, I talk a lot during road trips. He thought I was still upset with him about our earlier argument, so he tried to cheer me up by adjusting the rearview mirror and saying, "Hey Mark, loosen up a bit, let it go." I couldn't take it anymore. I told him, "Dad, I'm not mad at you." Then I said, "Do you know what's really bothering me?" And I explained the whole situation with that guy. Dad's face changed, and he said, "If you had told me sooner, I would have known how to handle him." A few moments later, Mom chimed in, "Come on, you guys, don't be so harsh. That man was really kind, and he saved our lives. You shouldn't be so ungrateful." I said, "Mom, what kindness? What unfairness? You didn't see anything? Everything that guy did wasn't for the reasons you think." I turned around in frustration, looking for the bag of chips and snacks we bought earlier from the store. We had laid James across the back seat to give him more room to rest. I nudged him a bit, saying, "Hey James, move over a little. The bags are under you." But James didn't move. He just lay there completely still. I didn't want to alarm Mom or Dad, so I kept quiet.